Hello and welcome to the Scholar Progenium. Today I'm pretty much just going to go through all of my armoured vehicles, talk a little bit about them and rate them on a tier list. So if that sounds fun, stick around. So yes, today gentlemen, we're going to be talking about tanks, and let's face it, we're all always in the mood to talk about tanks, so this should be relatively straightforward and fun. So let me start off by giving you a little talk through the format that I'm going to use today. And I'm doing this off the cuff. I've just got them scattered on the gaming table behind me, and I'm going to grab them from the pile and just talk about them and rank them as we go. So this isn't set in stone in any way, and it's very much just my opinions, and a lot of this is going to be about tanks that I enjoy using. So it's not necessarily the most competitive ranking ever, but that's certainly going to be a factor. So with S tier, it's going to be just those all-round amazing tanks. You don't have to make any compromises when you take them in your list. They're just an auto include, and they're cool, fun to use, and very dangerous for your opponent. A tier is a cool unit, or one where it's extremely powerful and an auto include almost, but maybe sometimes you've got to make some compromises or take other unit. It forces you to take other units elsewhere in your list to shore up things it can't do. B tier is just going to be a tank. It's there, it's present, it can bully infantry, it can duel other armoured vehicles, but it's nothing to write home about. C is going to be a tank that I'm not a massive fan of, to be honest. I don't think it's very good in particular. I wouldn't say it's a competitive choice or anything like that. And trash tier is just going to be tanks that I think are rubbish. I've knocked a lot of them out, or I think they're overpriced, or just generally units that I wouldn't personally take. I might own them, or my friends might own them. Not all of these tanks are mine. The majority are, but a handful of them are just my mates' tanks who they've left in the studio because they play around here all the time, stuff like that. So let's just grab a tank and get started. First of all, we have the BT-42. Now this is a particular favourite of mine. Now you'll have to forgive the sort of low-tech format of the video, gentlemen, but I figured it was a compromise between this and you getting to see my mediocre paint jobs on my vehicles, which I know you wouldn't want to miss out on. So with the BT-42 here, this is a light tank, Armour 8+, and it's got a medium howitzer strap to the top of it, and that is it. That's where the rules end, boys. So no machine gun, nothing like that, no fancy rules, no recce, no thin sides. It's just a medium howitzer strapped to a light tank, and for 140 points, it's essentially a great value option. If any army could take this, if this was Lend-Lease, I think it'd be quite popular. Next up, we have the Puma. Now, this is an interesting one for me. I don't take him in many lists these days, although he was actually the first ever armoured vehicle, and one of the first two units I ever picked up for bolt action. You see, back in around 2014, something like that, there was a local gaming store opening up in the town down the road from me, and I wanted to go down, check it out in the first week, also support the guy. Opening a gaming store in the local community, always cool. Got to back those local gaming stores for sure. And so I headed down. I had an interest in bolt action, and I picked up the Germans. I decided, so I got myself a box of Grenadiers, I think 35 Grenadiers, and I also picked up a Puma, having basically no idea about how the game worked on any level, just wanted some World War II models. Now, got into playing bolt action, have been doing ever since. Played a couple of years of first edition, can't remember when second edition came out, but been playing that since it came out. And so this guy has he's done a lot of work. I should probably tell you the rules for him. He's Armour 8, he's got recce and dual directional steering, so if he hasn't activated, it's almost impossible to actually pin him down. And he's got a medium gun and a medium machine gun. And now the medium gun, of course, is great on an armoured car. It really gives a full tank's punch on a cheaper chassis. And that machine gun's also 6 shots being German, meaning it can kick out quite a few shots despite him not having the benefit of a whole mounted machine gun. But that really is the kicker, the lack of the whole mounted machine gun. Although he's an undeniably good vehicle, I can't deny that. He's even fully enclosed, so he can't be pinned by small arms or infantry. But he just doesn't find his way into many of my lists. Maybe I've moved on to units, newer shiny units have caught my eye. But he's just fallen out of favour with me, it has to be said. Although I do use a Humber, and that only has a light gun and no whole mounted machine gun, he is a lot cheaper, and 160 points is quite a premium. You're getting into full tank points for that, and you've not got a full tank, that's for sure. So with all that being said, although he's super cool, super viable, undeniably a powerful unit, for me, he's going in, I think he's going to have to go in, no, he's going in between B and A. I'll decide as we put more tanks on the table. Next up we have the Bren Carrier, super cool little unit. Look at him, just those two driving around with their little Brens. As a Brit player, you've got to have at least one, if not a couple of Bren Carriers in your collection. That is just a must. They are so useful, they're so viable. They make you PAT, this guy plus a little 40-point PAT is a 2 dice 110 point combo that can put out 8 LMG shots. And if you need to pop the cannon, if you need to get into a tank duel, then you can hop the PAT out nice and close and shoot the armoured vehicle and have a pen plus 5, which is absolutely incredible. So, also really good for sticking an officer in, driving around, and if you really need his buffs, if you get pinned up, you just hop out, pass some morale checks, hop back in, carry on spraying. So he's absolutely incredible, and for 70 points, just an absolute auto-include almost in any British list. The only reason you wouldn't take one is just because you want to try other stuff. He's just justifiable in absolutely any list. Most common, I think, tracked vehicle produced ever, I think, might be a fact. I don't know. You'll have to correct me in the comments. But used on every front, long history, undeniably S tier. Next up, I've actually grabbed one of JP's tanks. This is his little Italian Flamethrower tank. I actually forget what it's called. I'm sure, JP, comment down below what the names of your tanks are, because I just know this as that little Flamethrower tank that just robs me of victory all the time. This guy is so powerful. Armour 8, despite his dinky size. He's got a vehicle mounted flamethrower, so that's 12-inch range. D6 plus 1 pins at pen plus 3. Absolutely lethal. And I think he does easily set on fire. That's certainly true. And because he's got a one-man turret, he also has to pass an order check if he wants to advance, move and fire. He also has a whole mounted machine gun, so if he runs out of flame, he can still ride around, blasting off 5 shots and making a nuisance of himself. So all around an excellent tank and tougher than he looks. And with his small size, so easy to get into cover. You can dart, dodge, dip, dive and dodge, as you might say, around the board up to the opponent, and then you're in and you're just lighting up veterans. I have lost the last sort of little local tournament that me and JP went to, not a big one, just like sort of 12 players or something like that. We ended up on top table against each other, and JP beat me with this tank essentially. I could not hit it, and oh man, like the hatred I have for this tank is definitely A tier. The reason I'm not putting it S tier is because of having to because that one man turret rule is quite debilitating. Especially if you manage to put a pin on it. Next up we have the BT7. Now this is actually JP's vehicle. I have knocked it out many times, and other such vehicles in early war themed events. You see, quite a useful little tank in the tank slot for early war Soviets, but beyond that, kind of unjustifiable in a list. On paper, he's cheap, Armour 7, light anti-tank gun, and a medium machine gun, both on the turret. No hull-mounted gun, though. Now, I'm just, a tank without, an armoured car without a hull-mounted machine gun, I can accept, but a tank without a hull-mounted machine gun, I know I'm a big fan of the BT-42, but he's bringing a medium howitzer, okay, and also the Finns don't have many options. Now, on top of that, I like to run a Bofors, which probably gives me a massive bias against this vehicle. You see, heavy autocannons, 84-inch range, 42-inch hard range, 2 shots on Armour 7, eats it for breakfast. So that probably does put some bias for me against the BT-7, but all in all, I've never seen one do anything, and I've knocked out a fair few in my time, so it's trash, I think. No offence, but unless you're playing early war, it's trash. It's a trash vehicle. Sorry, guys. Next up, we have another Russian vehicle, this time the T-3485. I actually used to own this tank. I used to run Soviets just before we started the channel. In fact, I sold the remains of my Soviets to JP so he could expand his Russian might. So this used to be mine. JP's been running him successfully, did a much better paint job than I ever did, that's for sure. And he's now knocked out a fair few of my vehicles. In fact, this and my Stug have become the nemesis of each other, one would say. So it's certainly an effective unit. That heavy anti-tank gun strapped to a medium tank, it does a good job. It adheres to that rule of having a bigger gun, heavier gun than your chassis. And I'm a big fan of the heavy anti-tank gun. I know some people don't like it, but with that 2-inch template and the 36-inch half range, you can really do work on infantry if they're refusing to come at you with their armoured vehicle and duel you. And when you're dueling armoured vehicles, this guy, he can compete with Axis if you're playing Allies versus Axis. And heavy anti-tank gun, he can pop his way through most armoured vehicles in the game without too much struggle. When you get to that sort of 6-7 pen ratio, the heavy or the super heavy anti-tank gun, there's not a lot stopping you as long as you can get that hit on the vehicle. If you play it well, line up that shot on a 4-up and then get the hit, then often the job is mostly done. However, with all that being said, he's still a medium tank, he's 1 dice, and despite being quite good value for a medium tank and quite a good setup, he is also quite expensive. And it's not a super heavy anti-tank, and he's not slinging any 3-inch templates. 2 inches, okay, but it's not wiping out squads of veterans anytime soon. It's just effective against most targets as a good all-round tank. So with that, good all-round tank, very usable, and certainly a solid B tier. Next up, we're back round to the Brits, and we've got the Crusader Mark III AA Mark II, essentially. So quite a mouthful, but what it essentially is an Armour 8 fully enclosed vehicle, no hull-mounted machine gun, but dual light autocannons. Now, it's great, this vehicle, really, really good. This vehicle is actually piloted by one of our esteemed members set. So you see, our early members, we sort of said to them, you pick a tank that you like, or a vehicle, any unit that you like that we run regularly, and we'll sort of follow your KD ratio just for a bit of fun as the channel expands. And our first member, in fact, Setso, he picked this unit, and we've been keeping an eye on it ever since. It's almost useless against anything above an Armour 7 sort of armoured car. Even Armour 8 vehicles, even in half range, it's glancing on 6s. It can pen on 6s, sort of armoured transport on armoured car, if it's got Armour 7 on the front. Of course, in the side, it's slightly different. And with this guy actually having tracks, it's a nice different type of mobility. He can't drive, he can't pivot twice, he doesn't have 12-inch range in terms of movement like an armoured car. But in many ways, he does work like a kind of armoured car on steroids, and he just smashes through walls, goes over terrain, goes through rough ground. He doesn't care, he's got track. So different type of manoeuvrability. He doesn't have recce or anything like that, but if he can dash around the side of another armoured car, he can duel it out. But that's not really even his main job. He's extremely good at assassinating weapons teams. That's what I really like to use this guy for. Just spraying down mortars, spraying down flamethrower teams, spraying down snipers, whatever it is, just hitting a shot on them and knocking the unit out because of the 1-inch template and the +1 pen. It's also really, and just having 4 shots means you're likely to get that 1-inch template to hit, which is nice. I just find it to be an absolutely just unbelievably fun unit to run. I just cannot get enough of this vehicle. It's so cool. But with all that being said, it does have a massive hole in it, in that you're filling up your tank slot, you're still paying 140 points, 135 points, I believe, 130 points maybe. So he's a bargain, but he takes up your tank slot. You're going to need maybe a bit more punch in your field gun, and you're going to need to definitely be taking a pit and almost certainly buying a Bren Carrier for that pit so he can definitely get to where he needs to be. Because this guy, he's not really dueling armour, and that's certainly not what you want to be doing. You want to be bullying regulars, shooting weapons teams, and so on and so forth. As I've said, I've waffled about this guy a lot, but obviously that makes me a big fan of him. He's definitely got to go in. I think I'm being cheeky doing this, but A tier. Next up, we have the Hanomag. Now, I am not a fan of this vehicle on any level. This, again, is one of the early vehicles that I picked up when I was first playing bolt action, and I haven't used him in years. Well, I do use him occasionally. He's cool to use like hop out unit veterans in a themed list, but he's trash. He's way too expensive. 90 points. You don't need the 12 men. Just take a truck. There's no ever justifiable reason apart from theme alone. But yeah, that's it. Just way too expensive. More than 90 points, I think he is with the MMG at regular. Yes, just not for me. Sorry, it's definitely in trash tier. Next up, we have this beautiful Churchill Mark 8 that was actually painted and loaned to the channel by my good friend Gene, who I know from the 40k tournament scene from probably a decade ago now. It has to be. Both getting old, man. But now, that being said, the Churchill Mark 8, I'm not a massive fan, if I have to say. It is good, and it has a undeniable factor, which is being a heavy tank, it can get away with a lot. And it can kind of bully units and even ignore light anti-tank options a lot of the time. So it's kind of like if someone's really pushing the boundaries, playing with fire in terms of the amount of anti-tank options that they have in their list, then this guy will, win you the game. Because if you can't take out a heavy tank, he's got the Dakar, he's got the 2-inch template, 10 shots. He's more expensive than a medium tank, but you can't deal with him as easily as a medium tank. So he actually is okay, if that makes sense. But he's not great, and he is too expensive for the amount of firepower he actually puts out, because of course he's a heavy tank armed like a medium tank, and as well as some light tanks. So you are really paying for that ability to just roll around and shrug off stuff. And that's kind of, you can save yourself some points, get a different tank, and just play better and more mindfully, if that makes sense. This guy just, if you're just having a chill Sunday game, he's perfect though, that's for sure. So he's certainly gonna. How can I have the Puma in B? He's got to be C tier. Yeah, he's C tier, man. He's cool, but he's not great. Next up, we have the Sturm Tiger, baby. Now, this is an absolute beast, a super heavy tank, Armour 11. It's got a hull-mounted machine gun, and on top of that, it has that massive, I think it's 145 millimeter mortar. It might have been even bigger, 400. It was massive, basically, and it could launch big old shells. Everyone knows about the Sturm Tiger. In the game, it's a heavy howitzer, so pen plus 4-inch template, but it gets to re-roll the pins and the damage dice. The damage dice result only gets to be re-rolled if you fail to do damage, but the pins, re-roll that all day if you like. Take a risk on a 5, try get a 6, be my guest. I mean, obviously don't do that, but you could if you wanted. So it's an incredible tank with those 2 backup rules. It's very expensive. You're looking at 450 points, and that's even for sort of low fuel, really. Check out I've done a whole detailed video on this where I talk about all the rules in detail, point out all loads of different tactics and how to use them and stuff. So make sure you check out that video, so to speak, but for the in-depth analysis. But long story short, although super heavy tanks are definitely not competitive, if there is a super heavy tank out there that is competitive, then I'd hang my hat on the Sturm Tiger. I'd say it's the Sturm Tiger that is possibly the only super heavy tank chassis that you could justify on a competitive level. Ridiculous as that may sound, the reroll to pin and the reroll to damage makes this just an absolute sleeper unit. And if you have not run one of these and you're a German player, I cannot recommend this enough. It is insanely fun to use, and it's really powerful, and it's got a cool skill sort of curve on it. There's actually a lot of learning to do, and the more you run it, the more experience you get, and you actually start running this like a beast. So there is the disadvantage that once you get good with the Sturm Tiger, you kind of got to not use it all the time, because then your mates will get mad at you. That's certainly one factor. So with that, I really want to put him in S tier, I really want to put him in S tier, but undeniably so many compromises. It's half your army, do you know what I mean? It's great, but it's half your army. He's B tier though. He's actually, I said B tier was nothing to write home about, and he's definitely something to write home about, but he's not A tier, is he? He's ultra cool, ultra powerful. This is a difficult one, guys. Comment down below what you think about the Sturm Tiger, because I'm going to get bold here, and I'm actually going to put the Sturm Tiger in A tier. I think the Sturm Tiger is great. I'm going to demote the Crusader. Oh, do I? This is difficult. This is hard doing this on the fly. I should have really thought about this in advance, but it makes it interesting. We'll leave it like that for now, and we'll come back to it. Next up, we have the Cromwell, an undeniably cool tank, beautiful. If you ask a kid, a primary school kid, young one, draw a tank, this is basically what they'll draw. So it's just archetypically a cool little cruiser tank, but it's, for me, I don't like it at all in game. It's medium anti-tank gun and 2 machine guns, 10 shots from the Brits. As good as most vehicles, but just too many points for 10 shots or a medium anti-tank. And even if you've got the 2-inch template, it's all right. But and this is coming from me. I like the Stug, which is basically the exact same points, and a medium tank, and doesn't have a turret. But the Pen 5, it just falls into that category where it's not cheap enough to, it's eating into your Piat's Bren budget and so on and so forth. You're actually having to spend points on this thing, and it doesn't get much more work done for the point you spend on it compared to other options, available to the Brits. And that goes for, Shermans or any other medium tank. I am just not a fan of them, I have to say. I like my big tanks, I like my little tanks. Medium tanks, just not for me. So I think realistically, it's justifiably C tier. I'm actually going to make it C tier with the tail. Just the tail, don't worry, but the tail in trash tier. Next up, we have the Joseph Stalin 2. I believe this is JP's vehicle, and we've barely run it. I personally don't think it's that great, despite how beautiful it looks. I mean, just look at the size of the gun. Look at it. It looks basically, it's obviously close to how Russians were getting in when they got into the sort of T-55s and stuff like that. It's getting into post-war, early Cold War aesthetics, which beautiful era of tanks, has to be said. So, armament-wise, rules-wise, it's kind of let down. It's an Armour 9 tank with a heavy anti-tank gun. It's kind of the same loadout as a Stug. It's got a rear-facing hull-mounted MG, and it's slow to load, and I believe slow as well. From memory, historically, and remember I'm doing this video off the cuff, so please do sort of correct any mistakes I make in the comment section down below, just for people who are interested in the precise rules and history. But I believe it was armed with some kind of dual, it was a separate charge, powder charge to the shell, so it took longer for them to load it. And Armour 9, slow to load. It's only a heavy anti-tank gun, not super heavy, so you're not getting 3-inch template +3 pen on your blast. Heavy anti-tank guns I'm a big fan of, as I've said, but this guy, I think he's just a bit too many points. He's a bit too big. If you compare this guy to the Stug, I mean, this guy's not getting heavy cover, and a Stug can easily roll up behind a wall and be almost impossible to hit while slinging out essentially the same amount of firepower, if not a bit more. So just because of where the machine guns are placed on the vehicle. So for me, is it trash? I think I'm being quite harsh today, but I think this is part. Is it worth? It's gotta. It's going. It's C tier. It's going C tier because a heavy anti-tank gun is good at knocking stuff out, and it is a better all-rounder than a medium anti-tank gun, that's for sure. Next up, we have this Italian armoured car. I think it's called the Auto Blinder, and it can be taken with a light anti-tank gun or a light autocannon, I believe. Also has a hull-mounted machine gun on the rear of the vehicle, and it's recce, and it's Armour 7. And it's a nice little package. It's cheap enough, and it's absolutely lethal with the Italian case blue rules. You see, Italian case blue, which is essentially the only way to run Italians now, actually good rules, makes them a ridiculously good army. Probably one of the best, if not the best. That's a big statement, but watch this space with Italian case blue rules. I think they could be one of the most competitive minor factions out there, if not the most. Now, it gives, long story short, it gives any pen value less than 3, so autocannons or heavy machine guns, in this case the autocannon, re-roll the damage dice. That's even if you get a glance. You can, if you're shooting a truck and a Bren Carrier, for example, Armour 7, and you get a glance and you fancy being greedy and want to re-roll for the pen, you totally can do. You're allowed to do that. So very interesting rule set, and there's loads more to case blue, but that's the combo with this, and it makes it an extremely useful vehicle. And just on its own, Armour 7 light autocannon, that's effective. That's the same as the 222 for the Germans. It's fully enclosed. It's recce. I think it even might have dual directional steering. So very, very effective unit. I think it's going to go. I'm going to park it part way between A and B here, because realistically it could be C if you're not case blue. Next up, we have the Panzer III. Now, I love this vehicle, and I personally enjoy taking it as, I believe, the G, which essentially the G class means that it's Armour 8. You can take a pintle-mounted machine gun on the top due to an FAQ, been able to do that for about the past year, and that really upped the tier of this vehicle. It makes it really, really powerful because, of course, the Germans get the Hitler's buzzsaw rule, so it's 18 shots. It becomes a legitimate Dakar tank, I believe for 160 points if you take the MGs. It's a little more expensive than a Stuart, but, well, For that, you do, although you sacrifice a couple of MG shots, you do get a medium anti-tank gun on there, which means this guy can duel with the big boys. He can threaten, almost any armoured vehicle on the game if he gets into the right position. And, a very viable package. 160 points for 18 shots and a medium anti-tank gun. Yeah, you've only got armour 8. That's great. Yeah, you want to save the points on the armour. He's still ignoring most pins. All the infantry can't do anything to him unless you fire that extra Dakar. So there is a little bit of a balance there. Shooting a Pinto Manta does make him open-topped. That means he's, the Stuart can get more shots without making itself vulnerable to pins due to its double hull-mounted LMGs and all that kind of jazz, as we know. So, it is good, but it's not as good as a Stuart, as a Dakar tank, despite its ability to punch a little higher with the anti-tank gun. Very solid unit. I think, gotta be said, it's certainly A-class. And we're running out of space, really. I'm going to have to move the books. Next up, we have the mighty Tiger tank. Now, this is currently on loan. Need to give it back on Friday to my mate, Greg. Now, he's just got into bolt action, started gathering himself up, a little German force. And he is in love with the Tiger, and justifiably so, because it is an absolutely epic vehicle. I mean, just look at it. What a beast. Who doesn't like a Tiger, really? And on top of that, very, very, very effective in game. Heavy tank, armor 10 up means that it's just shrugging off light anti-tank weapons. It's just laughing them off. It's got a super heavy anti-tank gun, means it's ripping open any other armoured vehicle in the game. Just doesn't even worry about it. And it can be, you can cover it in Dakar if you want. You can give it 18 shots. You can give it a Pinto mounted machine gun. I wouldn't. I'd be firing that big gun all the time personally. But you can do what you like, Now, with all that being said, despite its effectiveness, you do really pay the points for that. And just taking it as a normal, regular Tiger is arguably unviable. Although it's an amazing vehicle, although of course it gives Tiger fear, it is the cause of Tiger fear. It's still its cost is prohibitive. It not only shapes your whole list, but also it kind of denies you from taking any other cool units that you like. Want to have a 222 in your list? Well, you're going to struggle to have a good list. You're almost definitely not crossing the 9 dice boundary, even taking loads of little cheap things if you're taking a Tiger as well. So it's not only cost prohibitive in terms of shaping the list, but it's also cost prohibitive in terms of it's prohibitive if you're taking other cool units. If you want to run a Tiger, you just run a Tiger that day and enjoy the Tiger. And if it gets knocked out, if you get silly with it, then the fun is over for you, one might say. Obviously, you just want to have fun rolling dice, but you know what I mean when I say that. Gotta take low fuel and that is the only way to run it, in my opinion, is low fuel. And even then, it's very expensive. Even then, it's cost prohibitive in all the ways that I've already mentioned. You can at least make a list that actually runs. So, with that being said, it's difficult, I feel like it's C tier because it's so powerful. It's B tier. So we've got some cool units in B tier. We've got the Crusader in B tier. We've got the T-3485. We've got the Puma. There's a lot. I said B tier was nothing to write home about. I take that back. There's some cool units in B tier, it has to be said. Next up, we have one of my favourite armoured units in bolt action. It is the mighty Stug. Mine's a little battered because I use him so much. He's broken off that MG. I need to fix that there. I've had to fix that for a while, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, Stug, absolutely brilliant unit. Now, I'm going to say some controversial things here because arguably he's not that good, but for me, I just absolutely love him. You see, he's only 5 points less than a Panzer IV. Panzer IV has the exact same loadout, but it gets a turret and it causes panzer fear. For 5 points, that's a bargain. So why, in your right mind, would you ever take a Stug 3 over a Panzer IV? Well, you might be playing the Finns, and if you're playing the Finns, this is the other unit that I mentioned earlier. that you can take that isn't unreliable. They legitimately bought 35 of these. I think they were delivered around November 1942, and no, it was just early 1943 they got them, I believe. But nonetheless, absolutely, the best anti-tank unit you have for the Finns, it has to be said. Pricey at 230 points, and with all your elite infantry, you're going to be having to trim the fat on those sissy squads, that's for sure. But he can be what you need, and as a German player, I highly recommend using him, not only because he's cool, but that low profile that you see there, that actually makes a massive difference. That in itself is actually, although it's not on paper, you can't see it on Easy Army, the height of the model. The Stug is able to take cover that any other sort of armoured unit with its firepower would just love to be able to take. It can sit in hard cover, slinging 2-inch templates at any infantry that get too close. If an infantry squad runs out into the open close up because they think you're going to shoot at their tank and you shoot at them, they're going to be in trouble. Let's put it that way. 2-inch template Pen +2 is fine. It's doing work against infantry. And, obviously you're knocking out armoured vehicles. Most armoured vehicles that are commonly going to be used, you're going to just eat through. All from a nice little heavy cover perch. So, personally, I think the Stug's absolutely incredible once you get used to him. But arguably, a lot of people would say the Panzer IV is certainly better value, especially if you're a German player. So I'm putting him in B. I think I can certainly justify him sitting in B there. Next up, you've got the Humber. Now, mine's built as a Mark IV. The Mark II is just as good, just cheaper as well. So Mark II is 95 points. You get a light autocannon and a medium machine gun coaxial. And the Mark IV, you pay a little bit more. I think it's 115 points, and you get the light anti-tank gun version. So, he's very, very useful for the Brits. Although he doesn't have a whole mounted machine gun, and I really, really wish he did. I need to get my hands on a Staghound, that's for sure. He's very useful because the Piat, it's only Pen +5. Off the top of my head, I'm sure that's the case. And, you just don't have access to a bazooka, basically, or a Panzerschreck, which are both Pen +6. And, often you want to take that 25-pounder, or a Bofors, potentially, or a medium howitzer. You're often not taking, even though don't get me wrong, I love a 17-pounder. And, that Pen +7 super heavy anti-tank gun field gun is just great. It's really, really good, but very expensive considering a mortar can just deal with it quite easily by mid game. So the Humber just really brings a mobile package. It's got recce. It can get itself out of trouble. It can get itself into trouble with that 12-inch range, and it's shooting things in the side for days. As long as you pair it on its own, that's not the case. But as long as you pair it with other anti-armor options that your opponent has to keep their front plate towards, then in that case the Humber's going to be doing some work, that's for sure. So brings a lot to a British list. Highly recommend to British players. So for that, is he A? I think he's he's still only Armour 7. He's B. He brings a lot, but he's only B. So we've had a little bit of a rearrange, boys, just in between takes. Run out of room with all the tanks. B tier is taking up a lot of room, but I guess that's understandable. They should be the largest proportion. I've also decided to move the Auto Blinder into a solid B tier. I think he's no better than the Humber. He doesn't bring more than the Humber to the table. Feel like the Panzer III snuck in to A tier there because looking at it all, he is good. He brings more DACA than a Crusader. He's got I think he can sneak into A tier there. The Panzer III is legit very good. On top of that, I've just moved S tier up here to make a little bit more space where I've got the Stuart and the Bren. I'm doing this on the fly, so that's interesting, isn't it? Two very, well-known tanks, both S tier, both the Brits. It says something about how powerful the Brits are as a faction there. And they're just, sat there under the watchful gaze of the Emperor and Sanguinius. in all their glory. So we'll move on to the next tank now, and we've only got a few left, we've only got 3 left here. So first off, it's going to be this Italian Dakar tank. I think it's called like the MB50 or BM50, I don't know what it's called, to be honest, but I know its rules very well because I face it often. It's a light anti-tank gun. It's got dual MMGs in the turret, and it also has dual MMGs in the hull. Armour 8 with all that Dakar is just what the doctor ordered. Really, really, really powerful tank. It just chews through infantry, and it's got the light anti-tank gun to defend itself. Kind of wants to avoid getting into duels, but if it needs to pop a shot on the side, it's the Italian Stuart. Say no more. So we'll pop that up in S tier where it belongs. Of course, that just goes without saying. That is an absolutely sick tank. Now we're down to the last 2 vehicles in my collection, and they are 2 of my favourites. I've had a little bit of the bias with picking. I did kind of avoid picking these until later on. Just want to leave the best till last, one might say, because these are my 2 favourite tanks, really. Now, first up, we have the British Churchill AVRE, and this is a beast. 310 points, I believe. It might be 290. So around the 300 point mark. And for that, it's just an absolute beast. It's a heavy anti-tank, armour 10, so it's just shrugging off light anti-armour options. And it's also got that big flying dustbin there. It's only a max 36-inch range, but 4-inch template, pen plus 4 means it can easily knock out whole units of veterans, which is hard to do with shooting in bolt action. Not impossible, but hard to do. And the Armour 10 is just a really good package. You've got a hull mounted MG, great. Put a pin out, whatever. Pick off a little officer unit whilst you're grinding them down at close range. It's got its disadvantages, but it can take part in an anti-armour duel. It's got the same, a lot of the same advantages with the Sturm Tiger. Not got the rerolls on pins and damage, so you are relying on Lady Luck. Makes it a lot less reliable for its points, but it's also a lot cheaper for its points. As long as you're picking your shots, not going down, not shooting at units which are just going to go down, which they obviously will, then it's a very, very effective unit. And I think, arguably, although it does have some serious compromises, I'm going to pop it up in A tier. I think it's A tier, a little bit B, tipping B, but essentially that is an A tier tank, the old AVRE, that's for sure. It seems right to me. Now, finally, gentlemen, we are on to arguably my favourite tank in bolt action. I absolutely love using this vehicle. I love the look of it as well. It is, of course, the Panther. Now, it's an Armour 9 medium tank, but it has reinforced front plate, which gives it Armour 10. That's not the name of the rule. I don't know what the rule's called, but it's Armour 10 on the front. So Armour 10 on the front, Armour 8 on the side. So it's a Tiger from the front, but a medium tank, a Panzer IV from the side, essentially. And with that super heavy anti-tank gun, you're getting that beautiful 3-inch pen plus 3 template that's certainly capable of bruising up, if not annihilating, veteran infantry. Sadly, only D3 pins. If 3-inch template was D6 pins, this bad boy would just be unstoppable. But as it is, he's no disadvantages. He's not slow to load, not slow to fire, anything like that. He's just an absolute beast that does work. He's got a coaxial machine gun. He's got a hull mounted. I don't ever take the pintle. I love to just sort of sneak around the back of the board, take this guy on low fuel for sure, line him up in a nice position with my front armour, keep me nice and safe, kill a couple of units, then roll up to the midboard as needed, make sure I keep my sides nice and safe, make sure he's not under any threat, and just keep just taking out units. And as long as you can avoid getting him in the side with some tactical play, that's one of the things I enjoy about him. is he rewards good play. You know, he's a satisfying vehicle to use. You know, as you sort of prowl around, killing things. It's great. It's really, really great. I just absolutely love the Panther. It's just it's my favourite tank, I'm going to say. It's my favourite tank. Now, it is just a really difficult choice, this. My heart says S tier, but, you know, it is, even at low fuel, it gets into the level of prohibitive in points. You see, the Churchill, without low fuel or anything like that, is AVRE, that is. It's A tier because, you know, it's an extremely good unit, and it's a bargain for what it does, you know, and it's getting into the realm of being prohibitive in cost, but it's so effective that it does the job. And I think the Panther, you know, that extra 50 points, that's a dice, you know, and that's you're sniping not being veteran and a load of Panzerfaust. You know, there's so much you can do in a German list with 50 points. Not that you can take the Churchill AVRE, but I'm just saying it just gets into that realm, even with low fuel, of just eating. You know, you're having to take a couple of inexperienced units. You're having to just weaken your list elsewhere. So although he is just so good, you know, there's no way you could justify putting him in S tier, even with my love for him, just because, the compromises you have to make in your list when you're paying 355 points for an armoured vehicle, they're just very real, and can cause you to lose games sometimes when you just wish you had 2 Panzerfaust instead of 1 on every unit, or of infantry, or, you know, there's so many compromises you make. If only I'd paid for my sniper to be veteran, all of that. So with that, you know, the Panther is my favourite tank, but realistically, you know, I am a competitive player at heart. So there we have it, boys. I've done it. I've laid all my tanks out. I have no idea how long this video is going to be in post-production, but we'll see how long I've waffled on for. But we'll just have a final waffle as we glance through and see if anything sticks out like a sore thumb. Or does everything seem right? And make sure you comment down below which of these tanks is your favourite, any anecdotes you have of using any of these vehicles, any cool moments you've had, any you'd shift around, you know, differing opinions and differing biases, that kind of thing. Let me know. So we've got the Stuart, we've got the Bren, and we've got the Dakar tank. That shows, you know, obviously Dakar armoured vehicles are very, very effective, as we know. And, you know, the Bren's just so usable at 70 points. In A, we've got the BT-42. I mean, it's not that great. It's a bargain at 140 points, but no machine gun, 1 shot a turn. It's taken 6, maybe 7 shots in a normal game. The BT-42 might have to go down to A tier, to B tier, despite it being, well, the thing is, it's there because it only applies to the Finns, and in the context of the Finns, it's very, very useful, and it's a reliable armoured vehicle, so it's staying in A. We've got the Flamer tank, certainly A. We've got the Sturm Tiger, certainly debatably B. But I think until you use it in a few games in a row, you can't appreciate how useful the reroll damage dice and pins is. It can knock out vehicles without worrying. Like, you're going to reroll and maybe get a glance. You're getting D6 pins. Unless you're getting immobilised or whatever, it's more than likely going to go down for the turn if it hasn't already activated. You shoot it again, you get another D6 pins. You might have knocked it out then and there. If you've got a little bit lucky on both the pin dice, if you still haven't penned it with the reroll, and you just add another couple of pins on, you know, if you've set it on fire at that point or anything like that, immobilised it, add another pin. Most results add another pin. The Sturm Tiger is just, if it doesn't pen you, it pins you out of the game. So it's A tier. That's you know, I've used it in many games, and that's my honest opinion. The Panza III. I don't know if that is A tier because, yeah, that's having to come down to B. It's great, you know, it's got lots of advantages, but there's no way you can justify that being over B tier, just because if you want to use it as a Dakar tank, it immediately is no longer safe from being pinned in return by infantry. And then, you know, if you take a couple of pins off infantry because you decide to use your Dakar tank, you still got those pins, and now you're a tank with pins, which sucks because then you're not able to use your main gun. So yeah, that compromise, he's solidly B. These rows are in no particular order apart from chronological, as I've done the video, of course. So there we go. He's in B tier. B tier, we've got T-34-85, yeah, very usable, nothing to write home about. Puma, great, but 160 points for an armoured car's just eating into other budgets. Crusader, just one of my favourite tanks, probably top 3, top 5 for sure. Obviously, shout out to Setso, you know, and all of that, but, you know, his inability to duel with other tanks or anything above like an Armour 7. Even armoured cars that are armoured, the Puma can bully him, let's put it that way. He's cheap, he's very effective, he's a bargain for what he does, but, you know, he's B. He's just a B tier, is the way it is, despite coolness. If it was pure coolness points, he'd be S tier, of course. Tiger, definitely B tier. It's certainly usable as a tank, but it's, you know, you can justify it, but cost prohibitive, as we've said. Stug, B tier, yeah, for sure, very usable tank, as we've said. Humber, B tier, yeah, all of that adds up for me. C tier, let's see if we've been too harsh on anything. No, I think a heavy tank with a medium anti-tank gun is C tier, whatever situation. And I think medium tanks with medium anti-tank guns are C tier as well in any situation. So yeah, I think they're, you know, they are C tier, and the slow load and all of that, and, you know, despite it, the Joseph Stalin here, it gets C tier just simply for the fact that when, you know, you go to shoot at someone with it and they're like, oh no, I'm about to get hit by a super heavy anti-tank gun, you're like, no, it's just Pen plus 6, and they're like, huh, alright, that's not that bad anymore. So that's, you know, that in itself, having to admit that it's just Pen plus 6 isn't great. And then finally, trash tier, yeah. We've not got many in trash tier, but for me, the BT7, you know, a lot of people will probably argue with me against that because it's cheap. And, you know, why is that trash tier when the Humber's up here on B tier? Surely it's C tier. But the Russians have so many good things to spend their points on. Why would you spend it on a BT7? Like, there's literally 1,000 other things you could do with your list. And then, yeah, Hanomag, not a fan. Way too expensive for a transport. That's just the way it is. So, guys, I think I'm happy. As I've said, comment down below, let me know your thoughts. But I'll wrap it up now because I'm sure we're going well over. I've got to edit and get this up. We're behind schedule, let's put it that way. So, with all that being said, I hope you found this video interesting and entertaining. This has been the Scholar Progenium. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.